If you have ever been part of the gospel music community, then you already understand how loud silence can become. Silence is never just empty space in this world. It speaks, it presses in, and it weighs heavily on the heart. And when Angie Clark goes quiet, when the woman connected to one of the most cherished voices in gospel music suddenly stops sharing her life, that silence doesn't just linger. It becomes unbearable. For weeks, thousands upon thousands of fans have been holding their breath, scrolling endlessly, praying quietly, and searching desperately for answers to questions they were almost too afraid to speak out loud. The uncertainty has been suffocating. The speculation has been nonstop. The rumors have been heartbreaking. And through it all, Angie chose not to speak, until just moments ago. When she finally broke her silence, she did so in a way that sent shock waves through the entire gospel community. What she revealed changes everything. And what you are about to hear is not just emotional. It will reach into the deepest places of your soul. This is the raw, painful truth that Angie Clark has been carrying. And her message has the power to break your heart while somehow healing it at the same time. But before you can fully understand her words, you need to understand the storm that has been quietly building behind the scenes. Because this story is not just about a gospel legend and his wife. It is about a love that refuses to shatter under pressure. It is about a faith that remains unshaken even when everything else is falling apart. And it is about a family that is teaching all of us what it truly means to walk through the valley of the shadow of death while still lifting songs of praise. Over the past several weeks, social media has been in complete chaos. If you follow gospel music pages, if you are part of Christian music groups, or if you have any connection at all to the world that Gaither Penrod helped build through decades of faithful ministry, then you've seen it. You felt it. The unease started quietly, with small whispers and gentle concerns. But it didn't stay small. It grew rapidly into something overwhelming and uncontrollable. Concert dates that had been scheduled months in advance were suddenly cancelled without any clear explanation. Fan pages that had been excitedly promoting Guy's upcoming performances began posting vague apologies, announcing postponements and refunds but offering no real answers as to why the legendary vocalist would not be stepping onto the stage. Then something even more alarming happened. Angie, who had been so consistent, so present, so connected through her weekly videos and daily interactions, simply stopped. Her Instagram page, once filled with moments from their life on the farm, pictures of grandchildren, and glimpses of everyday joy, went completely dark. There were no explanations, no farewells, no updates, just silence. That silence opened the door to something else entirely. Cryptic prayer requests began appearing across social media. Friends of the family, fellow gospel artists, people who had toured with Guy, and members of their Tennessee church all began posting similar messages. They were vague, but urgent. Requests for prayer without details. Scripture verses about storms, valleys, endurance, and faith under pressure. Close friends shared that they were interceding for the Penrod family, but never explained why. They simply urged people to pray harder, to believe deeper, and to trust God through whatever was happening behind closed doors. And when the people who love you most refuse to say what's wrong, but beg others to pray anyway, the human mind inevitably fills in the blanks. That is when the speculation spiraled out of control. Facebook posts began circulating, claiming that Gaither Penrod had passed away. Some even included rest-in-peace messages and memorial-style tributes that sent waves of panic through the gospel community. Twitter threads exploded with conflicting stories. Some users insisted they had heard from reliable sources that Guy had died. Others claimed he was alive but facing a serious family or health crisis. Still others suggested that perhaps the marriage itself was in trouble, that after more than 4 decades together, something had finally fractured. Fan pages that had celebrated Guy's ministry for years suddenly transformed into what looked like memorial spaces, sharing career highlights and favorite performances as if he were already gone. The confusion was unbearable because no one could confirm anything, and the family remained completely silent through it all. Thousands of fans were trapped in an agonizing emotional limbo, caught somewhere between grief and hope. They didn't know whether to mourn or to keep praying, whether to accept what the rumors claimed or hold on for better news. People were emotionally exhausted, checking their phones constantly, reaching out to anyone who might have a connection to the family, and searching desperately for even the smallest piece of truth in an ocean of fear and speculation. So the question that has haunted the gospel community, the question that has kept people awake at night and driven them to their knees in prayer, is painfully simple. What is the truth about Gaither Penrod's health? And just as importantly, where is Angie in the middle of all this chaos? Why has she been silent when her husband's fans feel they need her most? To understand why this silence has been so devastating, you have to understand who Guy Penrod and Angie Clark truly are. This is not merely about a famous singer and his wife. These are two people who have represented something sacred to millions of believers around the world. Guy Penrod did not simply have a career in gospel music. He did not just perform songs and collect applause. For 14 years, he served as the lead vocalist for the Gaither Vocal Band, placing him firmly among gospel music royalty. His voice became the soundtrack to countless lives. It carried people through grief, doubt, loss, and fear. When Guy sang about heaven, it felt real. When he testified about God's faithfulness, you felt it deep in your bones. He wasn't performing, he was preaching. He ministered with every note, and it was always clear that he meant every single word. But Guy's story doesn't begin with fame or stages. It begins in 1983 at a small Christian college, where a young man with a powerful gift met a quiet, faithful woman named Angie Clark. Their love story has become legendary in gospel circles because it represents something rare in today's world. They met, fell in love, married in 1985, and from that moment forward, they have been inseparable. Truly inseparable. For more than 40 years, they made it a rule to never be apart for more than 3 nights in a row. 40 years. Thousands of concerts. Endless opportunities for Guy to travel alone or for Angie to stay behind. But they refused. They built their lives on the belief that marriage means staying together, even when it's inconvenient. That love requires presence. That commitment is not optional. Together, they raised 8 children, not in a quiet home while Guy toured, but on the road, on a tour bus, moving from city to city. They taught their children that ministry was a family calling, not just a job. The Penrods became known as the model gospel family. And while no family is perfect, they came closer than most. They lived the faith they sang about. Their words carried weight because their lives backed them up. So when a family this united suddenly asks for prayer without explanation, when Angie, who had always been an open book, goes silent, and when Guy, who never broke commitments, starts canceling concerts, it sends a chilling message. Something is seriously wrong. Whatever they are facing is so overwhelming that even their legendary faith is being tested. That is why the silence was so terrifying. Because if the Penrods are scared enough to pull back, then whatever is happening must be devastating beyond imagination. The warning signs first appeared in the summer of 2025. Concerts were cancelled, something unheard of for Guy. Major events, long-planned festivals, and sold-out venues were suddenly wiped from the calendar. Official statements mentioned family needs and health concerns, but offered no details. People who saw Guy in person noticed alarming physical changes: rapid weight loss, exhaustion, pain in his movements. Something was clearly wrong. And when people asked, the answers were always the same. Everything's fine. We're trusting God. Just keep us in your prayers. Angie changed too. Her posts slowed, then stopped. And when she did appear, her eyes told a story her words would not. Her smile looked forced. The light she once carried seemed dimmer. She shared scriptures about darkness, valleys, and faith, verses meant to encourage, but which felt like quiet cries for help. Friends began asking harder questions, but the silence remained. And with no answers, the fear only grew stronger. Prayer chains began forming quietly but powerfully across the country. Churches and ministries that had been deeply blessed by Guy's music felt an unexplainable urgency to intercede for the Penrod family. Many of them didn't even know exactly what they were praying for. The message was simple and repeated everywhere: just pray for the Penrods. Something's wrong. They need us now more than ever. Then October arrived, and suddenly, everything went dark. The social media accounts that had once posted occasional updates stopped completely. There were no new messages, no videos, no photos, and no engagement with fans. The website that had always kept people informed about tour schedules and ministry news showed nothing new at all. It felt as though the Penrod family had vanished entirely from public life, retreating behind walls no one could see over and doors no one could knock on. As days passed, the silence became overwhelming and suffocating. The gospel community, which had supported the family faithfully for decades, found itself helpless, unable to reach them, unable to help, and unable to even know how to pray specifically for whatever crisis they were facing. In that painful vacuum of information, rumors began to spread, growing darker and more desperate with each passing hour. Then, on November 18th, Angie posted something that instantly broke the internet. It was a photograph of an open Bible turned to Psalm 23, the Valley of Death passage. Resting on the pages was a single gold wedding ring, the sacred symbol of their 40-year covenant. Beneath the image were only 3 words: "Please pray for us." There was no context, no explanation, just a Bible, a ring, and a desperate plea. Within 1 hour, thousands of comments poured in. Within hours, the post had been shared tens of thousands of times. The gospel community went into full crisis mode. Bill Gaither reportedly called people in tears. Prayer vigils were organized almost immediately across all 50 states. Speculation became unbearable. Some believed Guy had died. Others feared divorce. Many suspected a terminal illness. And yet, for days, the silence continued. No follow-up, no clarification. The waiting became torture, a painful limbo suspended between fear and faith. Then came today. Just hours ago, Angie posted a video that answered every question and broke every heart watching. She appeared exhausted yet incredibly strong, her voice trembling but firm with resolve. She confirmed what so many had feared. Guy Penrod has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came in October. The prognosis is 3 to 6 months. 40 years of marriage suddenly compressed into a timeline measured in weeks instead of years. Angie explained that Guy wanted his fans to know the truth. He didn't want speculation or misinterpretation. He wanted people to pray specifically and to walk this final journey with him. She thanked everyone for their prayers, asked for privacy, and shared Guy's greatest wish: to keep singing as long as his body allows. When the diagnosis was confirmed, all 8 children came home immediately, forming a protective circle of love around their parents. Together, they made a decision to love each other harder than this cancer could hurt them, to squeeze 40 more years of memories into whatever days remained. When Guy first heard the diagnosis, his response wasn't anger or fear. He looked at Angie and said, "Well, honey, I guess we're going home to Jesus sooner than we planned." His only request was whether he could keep singing until the end. That decision gave birth to Porch Nights, intimate concerts live-streamed from their home. No elaborate production, no stage lights, just Guy with his guitar, singing the songs that had defined his ministry. Thousands now watch every night, witnessing what faith looks like when it costs everything. One moment from these Porch Nights went viral beyond anything anyone expected. Guy was singing "I'll Know I'll See You Again," the hymn about heaven and reunion. He made it through the verses, his voice still steady. But then he looked at Angie, really looked at her, and the weight of what the song meant crashed over him. His voice broke. He couldn't continue. This was a man who had sung professionally for decades, suddenly unable to finish because the woman he had loved for 40 years was sitting right there, and their time together was running out. That's when Tyler, one of their sons, picked up the song where his father left off. Then another child joined. Soon, all 8 Penrod children were singing together, finishing the song while their father held their mother, both of them weeping, surrounded by the family they had built. That moment has now been viewed over 20 million times. People can't stop watching because it's real. Grief reveals what was loved, and watching the Penrod family grieve shows exactly how much love has been built over 4 decades of faithfulness. Guy is currently receiving hospice care at home, surrounded by family. All 8 children visit regularly with grandchildren. Every evening, they gather and sing, making 40 more years of memories in just a few short weeks. Angie, who once stood quietly in the background, has become the strongest person in the room, holding the family together while loving her husband through the hardest season of their lives. The outpouring from the gospel community has been overwhelming. The Isaacs posted tearful videos. Churches have held all-night prayer vigils. Fellow artists have shared stories about Guy's kindness and humility. Thousands of fans have written letters and sewn quilts, sharing testimonies of marriages saved, lives pulled back from suicide, and hearts transformed because one man used his gift faithfully for decades. What Guy and Angie are teaching us reaches far beyond gospel music or celebrity. They are showing us how to face death with grace, how to love when it hurts, and how to worship in the valley. They are proving that 40 years of faithful investment pays dividends when you need it most. 8 children rallying around their parents is the fruit of decades of intentional parenting and sacrificial love. They built this family for precisely this moment, when everything is falling apart and all you have left is each other and Jesus. This is faith in action. Not just singing about heaven when it's theoretical, but preparing to go there when death is knocking. Not just preaching trust when life is easy, but living it when God allows something that makes no sense. Guy Penrod has spent his entire career singing about faith, hope, and God's promises. Now the world is watching to see if he truly believes what he's been singing all along. And the answer is devastatingly beautiful. Yes, he does. Even now, even when it costs everything, he still believes. He still worships. He still sings. Angie's silence has been broken, but the story is not over. Guy is still here, still singing when he has the strength. The family is still making memories, still gathering on that porch, still choosing love through every painful moment. Fans around the world are still praying, still watching, and still learning from a family that is teaching us what truly matters. If you want to support the Penrods, keep them in your prayers. Pray for Guy's comfort and peace. Pray for Angie's strength. Pray for their 8 children. Watch the Porch Night videos if you can. Witness what worship looks like when it becomes pure devotion. Share your Guy Penrod stories and let the family know his faithfulness mattered, that the seeds he planted are still bearing fruit. One day, every one of us will face our final song. One day, we will all walk through that valley. Psalm 23 speaks of that path, and Guy Penrod is showing us how to sing that final song with grace, how to face death without fear, and how to trust God when the road is dark and uncertain. Angie is showing us what love looks like when it refuses to quit, when it stands firm as everything crumbles, when it chooses faithfulness over comfort every single day. Love doesn't stop when the song ends. It simply changes the key. The Penrod family is teaching us how to find that new melody, how to keep singing when your voice breaks, how to worship through tears, and how to trust through pain. This is their legacy. Not just albums, concerts, or awards, but a raw, honest, beautiful testimony of faith under fire. Proof that 40 years of covenant love creates something strong enough to withstand even death's approach, and that building your life on Jesus isn't just Sunday school talk, but the only foundation that holds when everything else gives way.